following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
This Social Security measure gives at least some protection
for anybody to hand this out. We're asking for a chance to have the people who will receive the benefit to earn their way. The same principle established under the Social Security system in this area.
It is no longer acceptable to discuss women's rights as separate from human rights.
I know we can come together to face down the challenges of our own time.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Us Democrats here on Access Nashua. My name is Dave Tenza, chair of the Nashua Democratic City Committee. And with me here today is Tom Woodward, candidate for state representative in Ward 1. Tom, thank you very much for being here.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to be here and share with you this time together.
Absolutely. You're a first-time candidate.
Absolutely.
And you're running for state rep, as we said, in Ward 1 here in Nashua. Mm-hmm. What helped you make the decision to run, and why did you want to run for a state rep?
Well, Jan Schmidt and Sylvia Gale, who are incumbents and who are running again, came to the conclusion that I might have something to contribute. Mm-hmm. And Angie, who was the state representative, got to the age of retirement. And so they were looking for a third person to fill out the slate. And they had taken notes when they door knocked 2 years ago. And I happened to come out of my backyard, my work clothes, I have a good garden, and they were going to the neighbor's house. And I guess they had knocked at my door, and I went over and said, well, the neighbors are not home, but can I help you? And they picked up enough information to think that I was a good potential candidate in the future.
Great.
And so they asked me.
And you were, have you been involved in politics before in the past? Is this something that's relatively new for you?
Not directly in politics, but definitely speaking to the conditions of people in society.
Okay. So let's talk, first you mentioned a little bit about Angie Kopka, who's retiring this year, and Angie is certainly has been a force in national politics for some time. You talked a little bit about running with Sylvia Gale and Jan Schmidt, who are the incumbents now in Ward 1, along with Angie Kopka. What kind of campaign do you think you three will put together? And are you guys running together? Are you running separately?
Well, one of the things we tried to do was to introduce ourselves before the primary and put together a simple one-page information sheet on who we are, what we stood for together, and listed the highlights of the current legislature. And so coming together, we presented not just individuals running, but we're presenting ourselves. And we're sitting down and doing the door knocking together, planning our mailings and things like that together. Sure. But it's more important to see what kind of mentoring I got, because when they asked me, I said, I'm not running this campaign alone. Mm-hmm. So they took me up to the Democratic convention, and then they took me to the State House, and we walked around the State House. They pointed out the rooms, introduced me to people who were there that day, and sort of made me feel very comfortable.
Great.
And they asked me to go to Terry Novelli's birthday party, and there's another place that I could meet people.
Great.
So they've been sort of leading me through the ropes of getting acquainted with who's out there, who I need to know.
Sure, and they are two very hardworking women, so you have good people to learn from.
Absolutely.
As far as the campaign is concerned. What you three are doing is a lot like what Democrats are doing all throughout the city of Nashua and the state, in that we're running a coordinated campaign where up and down the ticket, we're all trying to work together to bring our message to voters, to draw voters out and vote for Democrats. Well, why do you feel that that's important and significant to not just the race, but how you would view being a state representative and being part of the legislature?
Well, basically, I see that as a team, and using the concept of teamwork. We each are running for particular roles in the government, from the governor's position on down to the state representatives, the Senate, And so we are all working toward the same aims of getting the same philosophy about government together, the same concerns, and working from top to bottom to make sure that we hear the people and communicate back and forth with the people in making decisions.
You also mentioned that you have you put together this pamphlet. You're going out talking about some of the successes that the House has had. You know, what do you see as those successes, and what do you hope to continue working on if you're elected as a state rep?
Well, I'm very concerned with the health care because this is one of the dividing issues within our society. And I really feel that those who want to repeal Obamacare ought to have a plan. Not just say we want to take Obamacare and get rid of it. What's the substitute that you have? Where's the talking points? Because we have something here in place that's already working for people, and we've added new people to it.
Right.
And anything like Obamacare and Medicare for the state people is going to change as the needs, and we modify it. And we talked about how many hospitals were not being included, but some of these hospitals in the second year are being included. So this is not something that's fixed in stone. It's living and moving and changing.
You know, I think one of the key things that Democrats here in New Hampshire need to point out over this election is that the federal government is essentially giving us a couple years to figure it out how it's going to work best in New Hampshire, because they are paying for 100% of Medicaid expansion in the state for through 2017. So we can really figure out how it's going to work, make adjustments to it. As you mentioned, there are going to be more insurance companies coming onto the exchange in New Hampshire. More choice, more competition, which will be great. And we have our a New Hampshire specific program that we're running here, which is unlike most other states. So,
and the important thing is that it came about by a bipartisan decision-making process.
Right.
And that speaks to me because it says both parties can work together on issues. And I think that's very important in terms of where we are.
Right. As long as we're all agree that this is a program that needs to continue for us here. Great. Another thing, we were talking a little bit earlier, and you were mentioning that you're very interested in looking at how legislation or how a bill is going to affect everyone in the state, and not just maybe special interests. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I think probably I can best illustrate that by the car title lending bills. The car title lending bill is intended to give people who need a quick loan money, but how much interest can they really pay over a period of time?
Sure.
And so you look at a piece of legislation like that and say, can you bring the level of the interest maximum down to a point where it's reasonable? But to me, as a citizen and thinking of people who get those loans and saying, you're going to possibly pay 300% on that loan, is really something that is hurting some people in our society.
Sure. And
can't you go back and figure out how to do this in spite of the greater risk these people might present in borrowing money?
Sure. And those, I mean, that issue's gone back and forth over the last few sessions, where initially in 2010, Democrats capped the rates. I was at 36%, which is still a significant rate. I mean, if anyone, comes up and says, "Hey, I'll give you a loan at 36%," you're gonna,
thumbs down.
Yeah, exactly. That's a high, especially with today's interest rates. But under the Bill O'Brien legislature, they got rid of those caps, and like you said, 300% was the rate that some people were paying for. And there is, I don't think people disagree that there is some need for this type of these types of loans. But you're right. There's nothing saying that the state can't regulate it and make it a little bit more fair for people. So, you know, another thing, you have a very interesting professional background as well, in that you are a retired Presbyterian minister.
Yes.
But have a business background.
Yes.
As well.
It was 15 years of ministry, and then I was going through some changes in life. And so I decided that I needed to go into the outside world, outside of the church, to find work. And ended up doing several things on short-term basis, but working with parents who threatened abuse to their children, to teaching physical education in a Montessori school, and working with a handicapped housing project. And then through those projects, I ended up finally working with Gannett Corporation and direct marketing, and was asked as the first person to start a new business for them. And it was a business that dealt with computers and direct marketing, merge purge of lists, adding phone numbers and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And worked with a number of national corporations in doing that.
Well, it sounds like a perfect background for politics or for campaigning. So much of it now is building lists.
There was a lot of that. I mean, at that point, many races wanted to get an accurate list. So our company was working to what they call a merge purge, to get the correct addresses and that type of information, match phone numbers and so on.
Oh, wow. In your background as a minister, I find this very, very interesting. You know, you know, I'll say, how do you feel that that will influence your campaign, influence, if elected, how you'll serve?
Well, I think I'm going to take you way back to
Sure.
1960s. I was ordained in the period of the Civil Rights Movement.
Sure.
So what I grew up on was Joan Baez and Pete Seeger and Peter, Paul, and Mary. But I still haunted by Martin Luther King's words, "I have a dream." I came out of that period of history realizing that whoever I was relating to a society in which prejudice and bias against people was strongly being expressed. I can't address parishioners as a minister without seeing their social conditions in which they live. I also have a volunteer role here in the community now, been going on for 11 years. I'm a volunteer chaplain at Southern New Hampshire Medical Center. So I'm addressing the needs of patients there who are at various stages of illness or operations, et cetera. And so to understand their particular situation, I have to ask, how are you feeling? And who are the people that are surrounding you and supporting you? And it's just kind of a neat way of getting in and understanding people. And I can do one thing that most doctors and nurses can't do, and that's ask if they want to have a prayer. And I don't view myself as a Presbyterian or any particular denomination, but I see spirituality in every person, regardless of how they exercise and form that for themselves. And I find that once people learn to trust spiritually, then they will trust the medical profession.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that probably one of the most important skills that you would bring as a legislator is you, I would imagine, a very good listener and have honed those skills over your career.
Yes, that's one of my things that I can bring. Some people may not understand that, but really in the political world, we need to listen to each other. And we need to really realize that things are very important to somebody that thinks sometimes almost opposite of me. But someplace between us, there is maybe a place that we can come together and share a dream of our society.
And I think that's what the governor and the House and somewhat the Senate this time in New Hampshire have been able to do is come together, work on the things that we can agree on, and you know, move the state forward.
And one of the things that I find interesting is the legislature coming up next week are reviewing the vetoes of the governor. And listening to my running mates, Sylvia and Jan, you know, they tell me the governor sometimes has to say no.
Right.
And while she's part of the Democratic Party, she could say no.
Yep.
And so there has to be that legislator governor dialogue to find out where we can meet.
And to the governor's credit and to the Speaker Norelli's credit, I think they both allow the individual House members to make up their own decisions as well. We are actually running short on time here. If someone wants to get in touch with you, ask you a question, how are they able to do that?
Well, my email is on the screen. It's tbwoodward39 at comcast.net. And my phone number is 603-881-8206. And if you don't get me by phone, I'll return those messages.
Great. Well, Tom, thank you very much. Good luck to you on your campaign. Thank you for taking the plunge and agreeing to run for office.
I'm very glad to have you interview me today, and hope we have communicated something of who I am out to the public.
I hope so. I think we have.
Okay.
Well,
thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And for us Democrats, this is Dave Tenza. If you need any more information, please feel free to go to www.nashuademocrats.com. Thanks for joining us.
This Social Security measure gives at least some protection.
For anybody to hand this out, we're asking for a chance to have the people who will receive the benefit to earn their way. The same principle established under the Social Security system in this country.
It is no longer acceptable to discuss women's rights as separate from human rights.
I know we can come together to face down the challenges of our own time.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.